Part 70. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 692. Chapter 692. For an author like me who doesn't like to post single chapters, posting 2 single chapters in 2 days is indeed a bit frequent, but this single chapter cannot be left unposted. Many readers should have seen it. We have one more silver leader today. First of all, I want to explain that the silver leader was rewarded by the big brother Yu in the clouds on his own initiative. It has nothing to do with crowdfunding. Our crowdfunding silver will be rewarded when the 5th level author's brand is upgraded to a great god. The name of the crowdfunding account is The Son-in-Law Can't Get Hard in the Morning, and it has been fully raised. Here, I would like to especially thank the big brother Yu in the clouds for becoming Ruyi Xiaolang Jun and the first silver leader in my writing career. You may not understand it, but it does have extraordinary significance to me. Of course, I also want to thank the many readers who actively raised money to contribute to the silver. These will be thanked in detail after the crowdfunding silver reward comes out. The way to thank is of course to add more chapters. According to our rules for adding more chapters, the leader will update once, the silver will update 10 times, and 2 silvers, 20 times. To be honest, for a clumsy writer like me, 10 chapters are already a pain in the ass, and 20 chapters, I may look a little flustered on the surface, but I am even more flustered on the inside. I have to pay off the chapters I owe even if my fingers break, but after yesterday's 10 chapters, I really feel a little weak. Please allow me to rest for a while. I will not miss any of the 20 chapters, so please rest assured that I am trustworthy in this matter. Without further ado, for the readers who have contributed to the 2 silver chapters, and for all the readers who support the genuine version, please accept Duan Zirong's sincere 20 backflips. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 693. Xiaoju has caused public outrage this time, and there are many people who want to beat him, including Mr. Xiao, Lu Ya, and Tang Ning. They were frightened in the capital, while he was a popular person on the grassland. If he didn't fight this bastard, it wouldn't make the people angry, and if he didn't fight, he wouldn't be the conscience of the world. In this expedition, the formation was very large, with 10,000 heavy cavalry, plus 100,000 auxiliary troops, and logistics troops. Naturally, the marching speed could not be increased. Tang Ning didn't plan to waste a lot of time on the road. He planned to set off with Lao Zhang first and go to the grassland to meet up with Wanyan to learn more about Wanyan's department. Tang Ning is different from Xiaoju. When he goes to war, he doesn't want to kill everyone. Chen soldiers are also human beings. They also have parents and children. If they can do it without using weapons, they can do it without killing people. There are many ways to solve problems, violence. Although it is simple and quick, sometimes using your brain can accomplish the greatest things with the least loss. Before leaving Beijing, Tang Ning always felt as if she had forgotten something. It wasn't until 2 days before his departure that he discovered that what he had forgotten was not something. The prison of the Ministry of Punishment. The Xingbu Tianlao and the Dali Temple Tianlao are both known as the place of death and are one of the 2 most terrifying places in the capital. People who enter these 2 prisons rarely have the chance to come out again. Prison department prison, a certain cell. The other cells had a sour smell, the prisoners only slept on a wooden bed, and the food they ate was moldy and spoiled. Ordinary people could not survive long in such an environment. This cell was different. The cell was kept clean, although not spotless, but clean and tidy, and the beds were covered with high-quality bedding. There were 4 dishes and 1 soup on a table in the cell. There was chicken at noon, fish in the afternoon, and tofu curd or assorted vegetable soup in the morning. After a month, there was already an extra layer of ionized chin. I bought a chicken leg and ate it in small bites. Chen Guo could not be more kind to the prisoners. She only ate 2 meals a day in the grassland, and the richness was actually not as rich as the prisoners in Chen Guo's cell. The grassland itself did not have enough food, and there was no extra food for the prisoners. Therefore, the prisoners they captured, they were all killed directly. Comparing the two, she finally understood why Chen Chu called the grassland barbarians. Chen Chu had the style and magnanimity of such a big country, but the grassland did not. She also understood why the fourth princess, after a long trip, returned to the grassland and tried her best to promote the peaceful coexistence between the grassland and the Han people. If the Chen court treated prisoners and prisoners this way, how would it treat its friends? The fourth princess was right, she was wrong, and Khan was wrong. This was the first time Tang Ning came to see Ayana in the prison since she was imprisoned. He was surprised to find that this woman had actually gained a lot of weight in the past month. Her body was originally thin and lean, but now she has become plump and her double chin is exposed. It seems that the food given to her by the Ministry of Punishment is really good. Tang Ning looked at her and asked, "It's been a month, how do you feel?" Ayana said, "The fourth princess is right. We should coexist peacefully with the Han people. This will bring countless benefits to us." Tang Ning thought that prairie women were all one-sided, but she didn't expect that this woman was not foolhardy and actually figured it out. The attitude of the Chen court, including Chen Huang, towards the grassland has never been to kill with one stroke. Chen and Chu are both countries of etiquette, and they pay attention to etiquette first and then soldiers. If etiquette arrives, there will be no soldiers behind. As long as the grassland recognizes that everyone is a friend, friends should coexist peacefully and help each other. Under this premise, anything can be discussed. They want grain, silk, porcelain, tea, and all kinds of things from the Chen state. They can use their cattle, sheep, horses, and their special products in exchange. If there is really nothing in exchange, the Chen state can also suffer a little loss. Help them. After all, Chen Guo is not short of money now, but any problem that can be solved with money is not a problem. But if they insist on fighting, Chen Guo will accompany them to the end. The improved firearms and 10,000 heavy cavalry from the firearms camp will teach them how to behave. In other words, as long as they are good, everything is negotiable, but if they are not good, it's not just a matter of having their heads knocked crooked. Knowing your mistakes can make a lot of improvements, and it's not too late to make up for the mistakes. Tang Ning looked at the prison guard from the criminal department and said, "Open the cell door and loosen her shackles." The jailer looked at him and reminded, "Sir, this woman is very powerful." "It doesn't matter." Tang Ning waved her hand. With old Zheng by her side, she couldn't make any waves? The jailer looked at him, nodded and said, "Yes." He opened the cell door, unlocked Ana's shackles, and then stood aside vigilantly, ready to call for help at any time. Ayana walked out, looked at Tang Ning, and asked, "Are you going to let me go?" "We are going to the grassland," Tang Ning said. "Wei Nianyun captured a friend of mine, and I want to exchange him for you. We will also discuss how Chen Guo and your Wanyan tribe can coexist peacefully. I hope you can lead the way." Ana thought for a while, nodded and said, "Okay." Tang Ning turned and walked towards the door of the prison and said, "Let's go then." "Wait a minute," Ana said, then walked back to the cell, sat at the table, and wolfed down the food on the table. 4 dishes, 1 soup, and 2 bowls of rice quickly went into her stomach. After eating, she wiped her mouth randomly, walked out holding the last chicken leg, burped, and said, "Let's go." People on the grasslands seem to waste very little food. Iina is like this, and so is Wan Yan Yan. She used to wipe the plates and bowls clean with steamed buns when she ate. It can be seen that even the nobles on the grasslands don't have an easy life. This trip to the grasslands is a difficult task, even more difficult than the last trip to Jiangnan. Emperor Chen entrusted all matters to Tang Ning. It was natural that there would be no problem for him to get Iina out of the Ministry of Justice. After learning about Xiaoju's news, Lu Ya swept away the gloomy mood of the past, but she was still a little worried about Xiaoju. When Tang Ning came back from the Ministry of Justice, she was already waiting at the Tang family. She looked at Tang Ning and asked worriedly, "Master Tang, how familiar are you with the fourth princess of the Wanyan tribe? Will Xiaoju suffer in her hands?" Tang Ning looked at Zhongyi and Tang Yaoyao standing beside her, staring at her covetously, and swallowed her saliva secretly, saying, "We are just generally familiar with each other, but Xiaoju shouldn't suffer much in her hands." Lu Ya said, "So he will still suffer." Tang Ning said, "Don't worry, he won't die, let him suffer a little more, and learn a lesson. Every failure makes you wiser. If he doesn't suffer this time, how will he know not to be so arrogant in the future?" In fact, Tang Ning and Wang Yanyan still have some old grudges, and it is possible that Wang Yanyan will blame him for those. As one of the few women Tang Ning can beat, the touch of Xiao Maniu's butt is still quite good. Grassland, a grassland somewhere, in a tent. Xiaoju lay on the bed, looking at the mutton in the bowl, and his stomach was churning. Roasted lamb legs are delicious, but eating lamb every day will make you sick of it. He missed the food in Chen Guo's army so much at this moment, and hoped that Tang Ning would come soon to save him from the sea of suffering. Eating meat all day would be fine, but what made him unbearable was that the fourth princess had some kind of problem, and always liked him to practice whipping with her. These days, his butt was almost broken by her whipping. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 694. Wang Yanyan walked in from outside the tent. Xiaoju looked at her and said, "Princess, just let me go." Wang Yanyan glanced at him and said, "If he doesn't come, don't even think about leaving." Xiaoju asked, "What if he never comes?" Wang Yanyan said bluntly, "Then you can live here. Don't worry, I won't treat you badly." Xiaoju glanced at her and whispered, "I want him to come over so much, and yet I said it's okay with you." Wang Yanyan raised her eyebrows, "What did you say?" "Nothing." Xiaoju shook his head and said, "I just want to ask, what are you going to eat this afternoon?" Wang Yanyan said, "Stewed mutton." Ugh. Xiaoju looked pale, covered his mouth, and kept retching while holding onto the bed. Royal Study Room. Chen Huang met with Tang Ning alone today and gave him one last update on matters related to his trip north. In the Imperial Study Room, Chen Huang looked at him and said, "This time, as long as it can promote the relationship between Chen Guo and the grassland, you can do it at any cost or by any means. When necessary, you have to aggrieve yourself. You can change your habit of not liking bathing. If you don't like Han Chinese clothes, you can try to wear them, after all, she is also a princess." Tang Ning cupped her hands and said, "I must do my best." Emperor Chen saw that there seemed to be worry on his brows and asked, "We are about to leave, what worries do you have?" Tang Ning sighed softly and said, "Your Majesty also knows that I was ordered by Your Majesty to serve in the 6 ministries. Although everything I did was to fulfill my duties, I also offended many people along the way. Once I go to the north, I don't know how long it will take to come back. Those people can't do anything to me, but my family." Chen Huang waved his hand and said, "I understand your concerns. You can rest assured about this matter. With me here, no one dares to use methods against your family. I can guarantee you this. Every time Tang Ning goes out, she does major things that are beneficial to Chao Gang. As an emperor, if he can't even eliminate his concerns, how can he be the leader of this country?" Tang Ning cupped her hands and said, "I thank your Majesty." With Chen Wang's double insurance, he no longer had any worries. The unmarried ladies should be protected, and the married ladies should not be neglected. Until now, Tang Ning herself didn't know how many people she had offended, and she couldn't be careful. When he walked out of the palace, he unexpectedly saw a figure walking in front of a certain palace. At first sight, he thought the figure was Han Ming, the former Minister of Household Affairs. Thinking about it, Han Ming had been stabbed by a glass of poisonous wine by Emperor Chen. After death, when I looked again, the man was gone. Tang Ning shook his head. He was indeed a little nervous and had even hallucinated. How could he see dead people? This also showed that he did not feel safe in his heart. Without Chen Wang's final guarantee, I can't leave Beijing with peace of mind. In the Tang family, Chen Yuxian sighed and muttered, "It's not like there are no generals in the court. Is His Majesty an old fool? How can he be allowed to go to war as a civilian?" Zhou Mingli said, "How can you say that to your Majesty? Your Majesty entrusts him with such an important task. This is your Majesty's respect for him." Chen Yuxian frowned and said, "What's the importance? We don't use civil servants and generals to fight. This is nonsense." Zhou stood beside her and whispered, "My husband has a reason to go, and it doesn't necessarily involve fighting this time. Mother, don't worry too much." Chen Yuxian said dissatisfied, "How can I rest assured that the north is a good place? It is a barbarian land." Tang Ning stayed in the study honestly. Now when he walked out, he had to face the gaze of his mother-in-law. Tang Yaoyao packed a small baggage, walked in, and said, "I'll go with you." Tang Ning looked at her and asked, "What are you going to do?" Tang Yaoyao glanced at him and said, "Look at that little wild horse." Lao Zheng leaned against the door and said, "Grassland is not the capital, and the third lady is not the fourth lady. You are not good at riding, and you are not good at martial arts. What else will you do besides holding you back?" Tang Yaoyao gritted her teeth and glared at Lao Zheng, threw the small baggage at him, and walked out angrily. Old Zheng caught the baggage and put it aside. This was the time when Tang Ning felt that Lao Zheng's mouth was the most useful. After all, he only dared to think these words in his heart and never dared to say them out loud. Old Zheng leaned against the door again, looked at Tang Ning, and asked, "Are you the marshal this time when we go north?" "In principle, yes." Tang Ning nodded and said, "But we have to go ahead of the army, arrive at the grassland in advance, and meet up with Wan Yanyan. It's better not to fight this battle." Lao Zheng glanced at him and said, "You are a good marshal." After Tang Yaoyao was attacked by Lao Zheng, she never mentioned anything about going to the grassland together. She wanted to stay and practice with Xiao Xiao. She only warned Tang Ning that if he dared to bring a little wild horse back this time, he would never leave again. Want to sleep in her bed? Tang Ning didn't even think about holding the horse. He had something serious to do this time, which was related to the national economy and people's livelihood. It wasn't about traveling or picking up girls. Even if Wan Yanyan wore Han Chinese clothes and took a bath in the morning and evening, she wouldn't do it. On the day of the army's expedition, the city was deserted, and the people of the capital came to see them off. Aina rode her horse and watched the 10,000 heavy horses pouring out of the city gate like a torrent, with a trace of fear on her face. With these 10,000 people in Chen State, the brave cavalry that the Sushan people were proud of was no different from paper. No team could withstand the impact of these steel behemoths. These people would be invincible on the grassland and crush everything they encountered on the way forward. Lao Zheng leaned on the carriage, looking up at the sky at a 45-degree angle, with a blank face, not knowing what he was thinking. Tang Ning looked back at the direction of the city gate and waved his hand, saying, "Let's go." The herald immediately passed his order to the rear, and the team of more than 100,000 people began to move forward, out of the city gate, all the way north. In recent days, the confidence in the hearts of the people of Chen State has become stronger and stronger. They hope that the court's troops can sweep away all enemies on the grassland and return to the court in victory. This time, His Majesty appointed Tang Ning as the commander-in-chief of the three armies, which was unexpected, but also expected. It was unexpected because there had never been such a young commander in the court. It seemed a bit too hasty to hand over the highest power of this war to a young man of 20 years old. But if you think carefully about what he has done for the court in recent years, it is not like what a young man of 20 years old can do. He has become the belief in the hearts of the people and an undefeated myth. With his departure from Beijing, some things that happened to him in the past few years have also been spread to be more magical. Some people say that he is the reincarnation of Wen Kexing, which can be proved by his 3UN champion 3 years ago. Some people say that he is the reincarnation of a jinx, and the corrupt officials in the court were all defeated by him. Some people said that he was a savior sent by God to save the state of Chen, and he saved the country from danger several times, and this time would be no exception. Some people said that he had an affair with Princess Pingyang Zhaoman, and that he accompanied the princess on a diplomatic mission to the state of Chu and deliberately messed up the marriage. When the princess left the palace and set up her own residence, she lived next door to the Tang residence. This was evidence of their affair. As a minister, he was arrogant because of his favor, and had an affair with the princess, bringing shame to the royal family. When this news spread like wildfire, the old master Xiao of the Xiao mansion stood up and said with a sullen face, "It's only been 2 days since the army set out. Can some people hold back so soon?" Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 695. The common people are always particularly enthusiastic about things that make the East grow up and the West have shortcomings. Among them, gossip about the powerful people in the capital, especially the royal family, is always more attractive than the old sow from Zhang San's family giving birth to a litter of piglets, or the dog from Li Si's family biting Wang Wu's butt. The commander-in-chief of this trip north, Tang Ning, was a prominent figure in the capital and even in the Chen kingdom, and the topic of Princess Pingyang had never been less. Rumors that the two of them were having an affair were widely circulated, and it seemed that it was really true. I have said before that Mr. Tang and the princess are quite a match. A broom star can defeat anyone he meets, and a husband can kill anyone he marries. They are just right together. These are all rumors. It is said that Mr. Tang's wife and the princess are close friends. It is normal for the two families to be close. It's better not to say such nonsense. It concerns the dignity of the royal family. Wouldn't this cause trouble for Mr. Tang? The common people regarded this matter as gossip and joke, but the royal family did not. A princess who has not yet left the cabinet has an affair with a courtier. This is something that brings shame to the royal family. The Ping'an County Yamen, Jingzhou Mansion Yamen, and the Ministry of Punishment all attach great importance to this matter, and to a certain extent, they control the public relations among the public. Of rumors. No one dared to make a big deal in a large area, but in a small area, people were still talking about it. Within 2 days, everyone in the entire capital knew about it. Xiao family. Lu Ding took a sip of tea to moisten his lips, looked at Mr. Xiao, and said, "I originally thought this was just a coincidence, but after informing Mr. Song of the criminal department, the criminal bureau and Jingzhou Yamen took action at the same time, and there was no way to stop it. I knew someone was behind this, but I didn't know who it was. Could it be the Tang family?" No. Mr. Xiao shook his head and said, "Tang Hui is an old fox. Prince Duan is now the uncrowned emperor. Before he ascends to that position, the Tang family will not do anything. There is no need to do it." Lu Ding wondered, who could it be? Could it be Prince Kong? He lost his position as prince because of Tang Ning. Now he is taking advantage of his departure from the capital to seek revenge. King Kong. Mr. Xiao thought for a while and said, "Looking at what Prince Kong has done in recent days, he seems to have become enlightened since he hanged himself last time. It is unlikely that he would do such an unnecessary thing." "Who could that be?" Lu Ding shook his head and said, he has offended too many enemies in the capital, including King Duan, the Tang family, King Kong, King Duan's party, and the Jiangnan party. It's hard to be sure. Mr. Xiao said calmly, no matter who it is, there will always be mistakes. People just need to watch carefully. After he finished speaking, someone knocked on the door, walked in from the outside, and said, Master, someone sent a letter. Mr. Xiao asked, who gave it to me? A servant in the Xiao mansion said, a little girl holding candied horse. She didn't say who asked her to bring it. Mr. Xiao opened the letter with a look of surprise on his face. He handed the letter to Lu Ding. Lu Ding looked at it and said in surprise, it's her, who sent this letter. I don't know. Mr. Xiao shook his head and said, you can't believe everything in this letter. Let's check it first. At the same time, Zhong Yi held a letter in his hand, looked at a beggar clan disciple, and asked, did you also write this letter? The beggar clan disciple shook his head and said, this subordinate doesn't know. Zhong Yi nodded, and after letting the beggar clan disciple leave, he looked at Qing and said, Qing, I'll write a letter and have it delivered to General Xiao's house. Prince Kang's mansion. King Kong stood in the courtyard and sighed, the capital is so lively, one lively after another. Mr. Su said, the more lively the capital is, the more beneficial it is to us. Now that His Highness's title has been reduced, he can only wait for the opportunity and take advantage of the chaos. King Kong looked at him and asked, when will the time come? Mr. Su said, just wait a little longer. We have waited for 20 years. There is no rush for this moment. King Kong sighed and said, it's just because I have been waiting for 20 years that I can't wait any longer. In the Tang family, Tang Chi stood by the window and said, it seems that there are still many people in the capital who don't like him. There are many idiots in the capital. Tang Zhao, who was sitting at the table and was forced to read, raised his head and said, don't even look at it. King Kong is against him, the throne is gone, Feng Xiang is against him, the phase is gone, Tang, it has become like this for everyone to oppose him, and there are still people who dare to provoke him. What does it mean to have no brains? This is a lack of brains. Tang Chi looked at him and frowned, you bastard, what did you say? Tang Zhao glanced at him and asked, why, am I wrong? If I could bring peace to the world with my pen, and my military skills could order the world, rule the court, defeat the rebels, and accomplish so many great things, what's wrong with sleeping with a princess? The princess is more important than the country, the face is more important, the world is more important. If I were the emperor, he could have an affair with any princess he wanted. Your Majesty will only care about this if you are crazy. You bastard, it's about the dignity of the royal family, you know nothing. Tang Chi glared at him and said, don't go out these days and copy the Analects of Confucius for me 10 times. These days, rumors about Tang Ning and Pingyang Princess Zhao Man are rampant in Beijing. In order to take into account the dignity of the royal family, the government strictly prohibits people from spreading rumors. However, it is easy to stop the flood, but it is undoubtedly more difficult to stop others. There will still be some gossips or extremely curious people discussing and criticizing this matter in the market. At the corner of the street, a person said furtively, let me tell you, Princess Pingyang and the ladies of Tangning are close friends. This is basically a cover-up for their adultery. The government won't allow you to speak out, but you still dare to speak out. Spreading rumors and seriously injuring the imperial officials and the princess is a serious crime. You don't want your life. The man curled his lips and said disdainfully, what are you afraid of? I am telling the truth. I tell you, there is a secret passage between the Tang mansion and the princess mansion, just to facilitate their private meetings. You're just talking nonsense. How is this possible? I won't listen to you, lest I be called in for questioning later. I won't listen to it either. What's the point of these gossips? A dog's life is at stake. The man stretched out his hand and said, "Hey, why are you running away? I have more information to tell." Only one person remained where he was, looking at him and asking with interest, "What material?" Seeing that he seemed interested in this matter, the man immediately said, "I heard that Princess Pingyang has a secret knot." "Really?" "Of course it is true, but how dare she, a princess who has not yet left the palace, to get pregnant? She has secretly aborted the fetus." After the man finished speaking, he handed over his hands and left, carefully observing the left and right directions, twisting and turning in the alleys of the capital, and finally entered the back door of a certain mansion. After he entered the mansion, the figure who had heard his rumors slowly walked out of the darkness, looked up at the plaque of the mansion, and then disappeared into the lane. Princess Yi Yang Mansion. While she was eating grapes, she was enjoying the massage from her servant. The expression on her face was extremely satisfying. After spitting out the grape skins, a trace of ridicule appeared on her face, and she said, "Xiao Lang Huzi, I ask you to pretend to be noble on weekdays, and there is also a man named Tang who is having an affair with a princess. This time I insist on letting you take advantage of her. Get down." The consort Zhang Chao sat opposite her and asked in surprise, "Is there really a secret passage between the Tang family and the princess's mansion?" "I don't even dare to borrow 10 of his courage," Princess Yi Yang snorted coldly and said disdainfully, "I just want to frame the case. If he has the ability, he will come back to explain. If he can't come back, the falsehood will become true." Fortunate young gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 696. Royal Study Room. While reviewing the memorial, Emperor Chen asked, "Have you heard about the rumors in the capital these past 2 days?" Wei Jian took a step forward and asked, "There are rumors in Beijing every day. I wonder which one your majesty is talking about." Chen Huang said, "They say Tang Ning and Manner have an affair." Wei Jian coughed dryly and said, "These unscrupulous people dare to trick even princesses and court officials. They really should be arrested by the Yamen and taught a lesson. This is more than just being a troublemaker." Emperor Chen put down the memorial, rubbed his brows, and said, "Just a few days after Tang Ning left, someone in the capital eagerly jumped out to cause trouble for him. Go and have someone check it out. Who is behind this?" Wei Jian nodded and said, "Yes. Speaking of Manner." Chen Huang sighed and said, "She has passed the age of marriage. She couldn't get married before, and she won't be able to get married in the future. It's strange to say that in the past few years, she has indeed been with Tang Ning. Getting closer and closer." Wei Jian smiled and said, "The princess and Mr. Tang's wife are close friends in the boudoir, and they move around very closely on weekdays. It is precisely because of this that they were used by people with malicious intentions to stir up these rumors. No matter who initiated this matter, he will be severely punished." Chen Huang said, "Before he left, I just promised him to help him stabilize his rear, but we can't break his promise." Tired from reviewing the memorials, he walked out of the imperial study and said, "Go and see the Queen Mother." After the Queen Mother's health improved, her mood also improved, and she often summoned the royal family's children to accompany her to the palace. When Emperor Chen arrived, he saw Princess Anyang and Princess Yi Yang also there. "I have met my father. Anyang has met His Majesty. Your Majesty is here too." The Queen Mother smiled and said, "It's really lively today. If Manner is here, we'll all be here." Princess Yi Yang raised her eyebrows when she heard this and said, "The Queen Mother doesn't know that Xiao Man has been in trouble these past 2 days and has not been able to take care of herself. She has no time to accompany you, old man." The Queen Mother looked at her and asked doubtfully, "What's wrong with Manner?" The people in the capital all said that she had an affair with someone, and the rumors spread like wildfire. Princess Yi Yang shook her head and said regretfully, "This is great, the royal family has been completely disgraced by her." Princess Anyang glanced at her and whispered, "It's not Xiao Man who has an affair with someone and has disgraced the royal family, but someone else." Princess Yi Yang looked at her and said angrily, "What did you say?" "Let me tell you, those people must have spread rumors about Xiao Man." Princess Anyang looked at her and smiled, "But some people are not." "You." Princess Yi Yang glared at her fiercely, but due to the presence of Emperor Chen and the Queen Mother, she could only hold back her anger and did not have an attack. The Queen Mother looked solemn and said, "The majesty of the royal family must not be offended. Your Majesty must not ignore these people. Manor is not married yet. How can she behave after hearing these words?" Princess Anyang murmured in a low voice, "Someone is already married, and listening to these words all day, he still behaves shamelessly." Emperor Chen looked at the Queen Mother and said, "Don't worry, Queen Mother, I have already asked people to investigate. Anyone who dares to spread rumors behind the scenes and seriously hurt Manor, no matter who it is, I will definitely punish him severely." The Queen Mother nodded and said, "That's it?" Emperor Chen was about to speak when he suddenly looked at Princess Yi Yang and asked, "Why is Yi Yang's face so pale? Are you feeling unwell? Do you want my doctor to take a look at it for you?" "No, no need." Princess Yi Yang's face turned pale. She stood up and said, "My son, I'm just a little sleepy, so I'll go back and rest first, so as not to disturb my father and the Queen Mother." Chen Huang nodded and said, "Then you go back." After Princess Yi Yang left, Princess Anyang also stood up and said, "Queen Mother, Your Majesty, Anyang also resigned first." Princess Mansion. Princess Anyang looked at Zhao Man who was sitting on the swing under the tree and asked, "It's been said like this outside, how can you still be so calm?" Zhao Man said indifferently, "Because everything they said is true." Princess Anyang said angrily, "They also said that there is a secret passage between the Princess Mansion and the Tang family, which was built just for your secret meeting." Zhao Man glanced at her and said nothing. Princess Anyang was stunned, then came back to her senses, looked at her, and said in shock, "Is it really true?" Zhao Man nodded shyly. Princess Anyang looked at her, confused, "Then they said you have a dark knot." "Not yet." Zhao Man glanced at her and said happily, "But sooner or later we will have it." Princess Anyang rubbed her forehead and wondered, "What is so different about him that he makes you all fascinated?" Before she finished speaking, she suddenly felt something strange coming from her buttocks. She grabbed Zhao Man's hand on her buttocks and blushed, "What are you doing? They all say that big butts are good for fertility." Zhao Man looked at Princess Anyang and said with envy, "How did Sister Anyang's butt become so big? Please teach me." No matter how enthusiastic the rumors were from the outside world, there was no news from Princess Pinjiang's mansion. However, the royal family seemed to be concerned about their face and forcibly intervened in the matter. Since the guards patrolled the streets, no one dared to spread this matter. Princess Yi Yang Mansion. In the end, the rumor-mongering was not found out about her. Princess Yi Yang breathed a sigh of relief, but then became a little angry and said angrily, "My father has been partial to her since she was a child, and it is even more so now that she has grown up. She is a princess in Pingyang, and isn't it, Yi Yang?" Zhang Chao glanced at her and said, "You'd better not provoke him. Haven't the lessons learned from King Kong and Prime Minister Feng been enough?" Princess Yi Yang said, "One of them is a fool, and the other is an old fool. I do things without leaving any trace. How can they find me?" Xiao Mansion. Lu Ding looked at Mr. Xiao and said, "It seems that the person behind this matter must be Princess Yi Yang." Mr. Xiao asked, "How did he offend Princess Yi Yang?" Lu Ding said, "Before, he was in Zhouziao and had some conflicts with the consort Zhang Chao." Princess Yi Yang came forward, but nothing gained. Later, when the Queen Mother became ill, Princess Yi Yang suffered a lot at his hands. "This time it should be I want to come back with revenge." He sighed softly and said, if it is Princess Yi Yang, things will be a little difficult to handle. Mr. Xiao said, why is it so difficult to do? Lu Ding said, she is a princess. Mr. Xiao said, what's wrong with the princess? The princess can occupy people's houses and indulge her subordinates to her people. The princess can banish the censor who exposed her from the capital. The princess cannot abide by the rules of women, linger on the land of prostitutes, and have adultery with many people. Man, can a princess spread rumors about the court officials and the royal family? Mr. Xiao snorted coldly and said, if it's another princess, that's fine. Princess Yi Yang has a lot of misdeeds on her, and any one of them would bring shame to the royal family. What qualifications does she have to spread rumors? Lu Ding looked at Mr. Xiao and knew that this time he was determined to use Princess Yi Yang to establish his authority and frighten those young people who were trying to make a move in the dark. Although the Xiao family kept a low profile, if Mr. Xiao really wanted to do it, what kind of things, just a princess, he didn't need to take seriously. He thought of something and said, the matter about Mr. Tang and Princess Ping Yang. Mr. Xiao waved his hand and said, young people should take care of their own affairs. Just take care of your own affairs. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 697. Last year to this year was a troubled period for the Chen state. The chaos in the south of the Yangtze River and the changes in the northwest would have made people in the court panic. However, in the past 2 years, they have experienced a lot of storms and waves. The soldiers came to cover up the water and the soil. Not only did the national strength lose instead of going backwards, we are thriving. Compared with the chaos in the south of the Yangtze River and the war in the northwest, the small things that happened in the capital are naturally not worth mentioning. It has been rumored in the capital that Tang Ning, the Minister of Civil Service, has an affair with Princess Ping Yang. It has been for several days, but no censor or official has taken advantage of this matter to impeach her. It was only after Tang Ning went to the northwest that someone instigated this incident. It was obvious that he had ulterior motives. But even though he left, his background in Beijing was not something that ordinary people could afford to offend. After the northern expedition was confirmed and the army set off, there were no major events in the court in the short term. 2 officials from the 6th Ministry reported some things as usual, and then a censor stepped forward, hugged the whiteboard, and said, I want to impeach Princess Yi Yang. As soon as these words came out, there was some silence in the hall. There are some impeachment stories in the court every day, but most of them are impeachment of a certain official, a certain dignitary, or a member of the royal family. They only happen rarely, a few times a year. Emperor Chen looked at him and asked, why do you want to impeach Yi Yang? The censor said, 2 years ago, in order to build her own courtyard, Princess Yi Yang occupied people's houses and allowed her subordinates to hurt others. Su Yishi made the decision for the people and wrote a letter to impeach Princess Yi Yang, but she used her power to demote her as censor. Taiwan, as a princess, she bullies the people and persecutes the court officials. She uses her power to bully others and is lawless. I hope your majesty will learn from it. Chen Huang frowned and asked, is this the case? The censor said, the Ministry of Personnel has made the decision to redress Su Yishi's injustice. Su Yishi has now returned to Beijing. Your Majesty will find out as soon as he investigates. Princess Yi Yang was used to bullying the people, and even the officials in the court did not dare to offend her, but she should not offend the people at Yashitai. When the last imperial censor was in office, he could not tolerate even a grain of sand in his eyes. Even His Majesty impeached him every 3 days, let alone a mere princess. Although Yashitai's habit of defying the emperor and the heavens and the earth has been tempered over the years, he still has some integrity in his heart that is not afraid of death. Emperor Chen looked at him and said, I will investigate this matter clearly. You can go down first. The censor still stood where he was and said, Your Majesty, this is the first crime for impeaching Princess Yi Yang. One of the crimes is bullying the people and interfering in court affairs. As a princess, she is not clean and keeps herself in check. She often comes and goes. The second crime is to maintain a number of male prostitutes in the princess's mansion and corrupt the royal family. Many officials raised their heads and glanced at him, thinking that this young censor really dared to speak. Princess Yi Yang is a famous slut in the capital. Everyone knows about this, but because of her power and the majesty of the royal family, they dare not mention it. He told the matter in front of all the civil and military officials. Not only was he not giving face to Princess Yi Yang, he was also clearly not giving face to His Majesty. Huang Chen's face was a little confused. After all, it was his daughter who did such a thing. Being brought up in public, he, as a father, was equally embarrassed. He looked solemnly and asked, Is there any more? All officials are good at observing words and expressions. Seeing His Majesty's face darken, they knew that His Majesty was already dissatisfied. Anyone with a discerning eye should know enough to stop and leave some face to His Majesty. The young censor raised his head and said, Your Majesty, there is more. He hugged the whiteboard and said, Princess Yi Yang's third crime is that she indulged her subordinates, spread rumors, slandered the royal princess and court officials, causing great damage to the reputation of Princess Pingyang and the Minister of Civil Affairs. It is extremely bad. I hope that Your Majesty will punish you severely and completely put an end to this evil trend. The rumors about Princess Pingyang and the Minister of Civil Affairs have been spreading in Beijing these days. Everyone knows about it, and all the officials have naturally heard about it. But what they didn't expect was that it was Princess Yi Yang who was behind this incident, and the excitement was going to be huge. Emperor Chen turned back to look at Wei Jian, who nodded helplessly and said, I just received the news from the spy, and I haven't had time to tell His Majesty yet. Emperor Chen's face was as dark as water. He looked down and said, I will investigate this matter strictly and withdraw from the court. Princess Yi Yang Mansion. Princess Yi Yang was about to go out when suddenly several eunuchs and maids walked in from outside. Princess Yi Yang looked at them and asked in surprise, What are you doing? An old palace maid looked at him and said, By Your Majesty's order, there are several cases that require the princess's cooperation. Princess Yi Yang looked at her heart skipped a beat, and asked, What case? The old palace maid said, Someone impeached the princess for occupying a private house, retaliating against the imperial censor, spreading rumors and slandering the imperial officials and Princess Pingyang. Princess Yi Yang held her forehead and said with a pale face, It's nonsense, it's simply nonsense. Would I do such a thing? Who are you? How dare you slander me? The old palace maid looked at her and said, Whether he has slandered the princess or not, we will find out once we find out. The charges against Princess Yi Yang impeached by the Yashitai were full of personal and material evidence, and she simply could not stand the test. Her villa was built on the site of someone else's farm. The resume of the censor who was forced to leave the capital by her was also available in the official department. He slandered the imperial official and the princess for having an affair. The servants of the princess palace heard that it was Your Majesty who ordered under strict investigation. He immediately knelt down and confessed. After the truth came out, everyone finally understood who the shame of the royal family was, and the rumors about Princess Pingyang and Tang Ning were self-defeating. The culprit of these things, Princess Yi Yang, was punished severely this time. She became the first princess in this dynasty to be demoted to a princess. Princess Yi Yang became the princess of Yi Yang and was forcibly escorted to a Taoist temple outside the city to meditate on her mistakes and repent. This year here, you are not allowed to go out to the Taoist temple. There are female officials in the palace watching you, and every move does not violate the rules. Princess Yi Yang was very famous in the capital, and she was responsible for the deeds of holding 10 men at night. A year of abstinence was probably worse than death for her. A certain palace in the palace. Concubine Tang Hui looked at Emperor Chen and whispered, "Your Majesty, is the punishment for Yi Yang this time too severe?" Chen Huang said solemnly, "It's not serious at all. Look at all the bastard things she did. If she doesn't know how to repent, the royal family's face will be completely lost to her sooner or later." Concubine Tang Hui lowered her head and stopped talking about this matter. After a while, she raised her head and said, "By the way, Pingyang has suffered a terrible disaster this time. Does your Majesty want to send someone to Tang Mansion and Pingyang Mansion to investigate and clear her name?" The Queen Mother glanced at her and said, "What are you checking?" The minister of Tang left his family behind and worked for the court in the north. As soon as he left, your Majesty sent someone to check his home. What do you want him to think? This is not to ask an important minister. Chilling. Emperor Chen nodded and said, "The Queen Mother is right. Now that the truth has been revealed, there is no need to make any unnecessary moves." The Queen Mother shook her head and said, "This child Yi Yang is not good. She just pitied her consort, and she must have felt bad." In Princess Yi Yang's mansion, Zhang Chao hummed a light tune, looked at the servants in the house, and said, "This month, everyone's monthly salary will be increased tenfold. In addition, let the kitchen prepare some good wine and dishes, and deliver them to the house. Come to my room." Fortunate Young Gentleman Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 698. Fate is real. Some people are born into rich families, rich daughters, and have a comfortable life without worries about food and clothing. Some people are born into poor families, with no clothes to cover their bodies and no food to fill their stomachs, and they will end their lives. But fate can only determine a person's starting point, and it is not immutable. Some people are born into rich families, but their families fall into decline and their old age is miserable. Some people are born into poverty, but they are successful in their lives and become marquises and prime ministers. Even the children of the royal family may not always be in a high position. King Kong was born a prince, but now he is demoted to the air king. Princess Yi Yang has the same fate as him, from a princess to a princess, a difference of one word, 1,000 differences. What everyone did not expect was that Princess Yi Yang had a decadent private life and oppressed the people for many years. The censorate has always turned a blind eye to this matter. Why did they accuse her of several crimes this time? It is obvious that they want to fight her to the death. Since it is not because of the first two charges, it must be because of the last one. A few days ago, rumors began to spread in the capital that Tang Ning, the Minister of Personnel, and Princess Pingyang Zhaoman had an affair, and it was Princess Yi Yang who was behind it. The private grudge between Tang Ning and Princess Yi Yang was no secret in the capital. This time when he left the capital, Princess Yi Yang took advantage of his absence to stir up trouble in the capital, which was understandable. But Tang Ning's absence from the capital did not mean that he had no backup plan in the capital. As a military family, the Tang family had good relations with several top military families in the capital. This time, the incident of Princess Yi Yang was undoubtedly a deterrent to those who were secretly ready to make a move. Princess Yi Yang's ending was so miserable. If it were them, wouldn't they not even be able to leave a complete corpse? This is a warning to some people, warning that if you don't have Princess Yi Yang's backing, it's better to be honest. The rumors were dispelled, and the people in the capital also talked about it. It's been rumored for a long time, but it turns out to be fake. It was Princess Yi Yang who retaliated behind the scenes. I think Lord Tang and the princess are a good match. How can it be fake? You are not alone. Tang Ning naturally didn't know that so many things had happened in the capital after he left. With the Xiao family, the Lu family, and the promise made to him by Emperor Chen, he didn't have to worry even if the sky fell. He, Lao Zheng, and IINA left the army within 2 days after leaving the capital and headed for the grassland at a faster speed. They rode fast all the way and arrived in Fengzhou in just half a month. Fengzhou was the front line against the grassland. The state of Chen stationed 300,000 troops in Fengzhou and Shenzhou to block the enemies on the grassland outside Yinshan. The highest general stationed in Yinshan was Xiao Qing, the general of the Right Guard. The military system of the state of Chen was very strange. The generals of the 16 guards were generally nominal positions. The generals of the next level were sent to the border army. The real person in charge was only the 4th rank Zhonglang general. In the tent, Xiao Qing bowed to Tang Ning and said, "Xiao Qing greets the marshal." A few days ago, the urgent report from the capital had already reached Fengzhou. This time, Tang Ning was the supreme commander of the northern expedition, and the border army generals had to obey his command. "General Xiao, please don't be polite." Tang Ning extended his hand and said, "I just came here, and I need General Xiao to tell me the situation on the grassland in detail." Xiao Qing was relieved when he heard this. He was really worried that the young commander sent by the court would ignore the advice and insist on his own way, destroying the lives of the border soldiers. Now it seems that he is not such a person. Xiao Qing cupped his hands and said, "Something happened to the black barbarian tribe, the old enemy of the Sushan people. The Wanyan tribe was under much less pressure and began to turn back to deal with Chenchu. We have withdrawn all the troops north of Yinshan Mountain, except General Xiao." "General Xiao is fine." Tang Ning waved his hand and asked, "What's the situation in Chu?" "Chu?" Xiao Qing looked at him, a trace of surprise appeared on his face, and said, "Chu should have withdrawn its troops as well." Tang Ning asked again, "Where is Princess Changning?" "Princess Changning's whereabouts are unknown." Xiao Qing looked at him and said, "However, she should be fine for the time being. The grassland is huge, and it is like looking for a few hundred people to find a needle in a haystack. If she was caught like General Xiao, the Sushan people would have spread the news all over the world." For Tang Ning, it was good news that Li Tianlan had no news. If she really fell into the hands of the Sushan people, Wanyan Yan might not be able to protect her. After all, she was a princess of Chu, with a noble status, and was different from Xiaoju, a dispensable guy who couldn't get hard. Xiao Qing looked at Tang Ning and asked tentatively, "The court did not say it clearly in the secret letter. I would like to ask the marshal, has the plan changed for this northern expedition?" Tang Ning nodded and said, "Your Majesty intends to support the 4th princess of the Wanyan tribe as the new Khan." "4th princess," Xiao Qing thought about it and suddenly said, "I heard that the 4th princess of the Wanyan tribe has a very good impression of the Han people. If she can become the new Khan, we Han people may really be able to coexist peacefully with them." He looked at Tang Ning and said, "I will arrange an envoy to go to the grassland to contact him." Tang Ning waved his hand and said, "No, I will go in person this time." Xiao Qing was stunned, and then his face suddenly changed, saying, "Marshal leads by example, Xiao admires you, but what is your status? The overall situation in the northwest is still waiting for you to preside over. How can you take such a risk? No, this is absolutely not possible." Tang Ning shook his head and said, "It's useless for you to go there for this matter. Wanyan Yan was still just the 4th princess, and her power was not as powerful as that of the eldest prince and the 3rd prince. It was not possible to just send an envoy over to help her become a Khan. After he met Yan Yan, he had to think about this matter in a long term." Xiao Qing looked at him and wanted to persuade him. Tang Ning waved his hand and said, "This is a military order." Xiao Qing stood up straight and said respectfully, "Yes, Marshal." Tang Ning did not waste time at Fengzhou station and went into the grassland with Lao Zheng and Aina the next day. He was riding a horse, looking at the endless grassland, turned to look at Aina, and asked, "Do you know the road? The vast grassland is endless as far as the eye can see. There is no official road like Chenchu. All you can step on are roads." If you are not an experienced herdsman, you may get lost in the grassland. What's more, you can find it in this vast sea of grass. A certain tribe. Aina glanced at him and said disdainfully, "You are insulting me." Tang Ning looked at her and corrected her, "Teach you a sentence in Chinese. In this context, you can say humiliation or look down upon. It's best not to say insult." Aina kept these words in mind, raised his riding whip, and said, "Let's go." Deep in the grassland, somewhere in the pasture, Xiaoju was lying on the grass, looking up to the sky and sighing, "When will you come?" Wang Yanyan walked over with a whip in hand and said, "Get up and continue." "I can't get up." Xiaoju put his hands behind his head and said, "Just beat me to death like this." Wang Yanyan looked at him and said, "Practice for another half hour, and I'll let you eat a steamed bun for lunch." Thinking of beef buns and mutton buns, Xiaoju felt nauseated. In the past 2 months, he ate meat until he vomited. Now he eats every day just to survive. He closed his eyes and said, "You'd better beat me to death." Wanyanyan smiled and said, "Today I'm eating stuffed cabbage." Xiaoju opened his eyes suddenly, jumped up from the ground, patted the grass clippings on his butt, and said, "Come on, just remember not to slap your face." Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 699. Ouch! A wolf howl came from deep in the grass. Old Zhang pulled a grey wolf out of the grass by its legs. He licked his lips and said, "You're lucky, we have some meat today." The first time Tang Ning ate wolf meat, she thought it tasted okay, but after eating it for several days, she felt like vomiting when she saw it. After they entered the grassland, they were not very lucky. They encountered a pack of wolves on the first day they camped. Ordinary wolves usually only have a few, or at most a dozen, but God knows how those dozens of wolves got together. Lao Zheng's knife was blunt, and it took only 3 people to deal with the group of wolves. Then the blood on the ground attracted more wolves. They retreated and killed the wolves. They waited until dawn to get rid of the wolves, but sadly found that they had deviated from the original route. Even Aina was looking for them. No way. The dry food was lost and the horses ran away. Fortunately, there was still wolf meat to eat, but after eating it for several days, I was already tired of it. Thinking that they were eating sour wolf meat in the wilderness, while Xiaoju was eating roasted lamb legs in the Wanyan tribe's tent, Tang Ning decided in her heart that when she saw him, she would kick her feet more often to satisfy her hatred. Lao Zhang threw the wolf corpse on the ground. Ayana knelt down, touched the ground under his feet, and said, "We found the way." Tang Ning knelt down and took a look, but didn't see anything interesting. She asked, "Where is the road?" Aina said, "Follow the sheep plate and you will find the tribe." Tang Ning asked in surprise, "What is a sheep plate?" Along the way, Aina and Tang Ning have lived and died together, and they have long lost their previous hostility towards him. She explained, "The winter in the grassland is very cold. The sheep sleep directly on the grass. If they cannot warm the land, they will die of illness, or be crushed to death by other sheep, so in winter, herdsmen will pile sheep dung together, which is a sheep plate. When the sheep lie on it, they can quickly cover their bodies and keep themselves warm, and they will not die of illness or death. He won't be crushed to death." Tang Ning leaned over and took a look. After careful examination, she found that the land under the grass was dark brown, which was different from other places. He understood what Aina meant and asked, "So, if you find the sheep plate, you can find your tribe?" Aina nodded and said, "Yes, in winter, herdsmen will stay where there are sheep plates. Each tribe has its own sheep plate. If you find the sheep plate, you can find the road." Tang Ning thought for a while and asked, "Did you also use this method to find enemies when fighting against the black barbarians?" Aina did not deny it, but Tang Ning said in surprise, "Then why didn't they burn their sheep plates?" Without the sheep and horses, Wouldn't their tribe also starve to death? Wouldn't it mean that they wouldn't even need to use weapons? Aina glanced at him and said, the sheep plate means to the grassland tribes what the ancestral graves mean to you Han people. Burning people's sheep plates is tantamount to digging up people's ancestral graves. No grassland people would do that. Every nation has its own culture, but Tang Ning was still a little ignorant. Ayana searched around the grassland and soon found a few sheep bones buried in the ground in a certain direction. She pointed in the direction of the tip of the sheep bone and said, let's go, we should be there in a few days. Thinking of eating wolf meat for several more days, Tang Ning's stomach began to churn again. It's no wonder that little Maniu is obsessed with Han people's food. Living in such an environment, Chen country is simply a paradise for them. It's no wonder that they have always wanted to occupy Chenchu. In comparison, the environment in the Central Plains and Jiangnan is in the sky and underground. 3 days later, Ayana looked at the fertile pasture ahead, breathed a sigh of relief, and said, the tribe led by the princess is ahead. The three of them walked towards the tent on the grassland. Not long after, a group of people came galloping towards them. Tang Ning glanced at Lao Zhang. Lao Zhang clapped his hands and drew the butcher's knife on his lower back. Seeing the person in front of him clearly, Ayana's expression changed slightly and asked, Butai, why are you here? The man on the horse glanced at her and said in surprise, didn't you go to Chen State as an undercover agent? Why are you back again? Tang Ning couldn't understand what they were saying, but looking at Ayana's expression, she knew that things might have changed, so she stood behind her and watched the changes. My identity was discovered by them, my mission failed, and I finally escaped back. Ayana looked at the man and asked, where's the princess, why are you in the Yuta tribe? The man named Butai smiled and said, you don't know, Wutabu already belongs to the eldest prince. If you want to find the fourth princess, go another 100 miles to Wanbu to find her. Aina glanced at him, turned around and said, let's go. Wait a minute, Butai said loudly, rode forward, looked at Tang Ning and Lao Zhang, and asked Ayana, who are they? Ayana said, they are Han undercovers placed by the fourth princess in the Chen kingdom. It was with their help this time that I was able to escape from the Chen kingdom, but their identities were also exposed. This time they came back with me and defected to the fourth princess. A smile appeared on Butai's face and he said, what's the future of going to the fourth princess? Ayana might as well bring them to join the eldest prince. It's much better to follow the eldest prince than to follow the fourth princess. Aina glanced at him and said, let's wait until the eldest prince becomes Khan to discuss this matter. Watching Aina and Tang Ning leave, Butai sneered and said, at that time, will the eldest prince still take you in his eyes? A man stepped forward and asked, Chief, do you want to stop Aina? Why are you stopping her? Butai glared at him and said, have you forgotten who her master is? If you piss off that old guy, even the eldest prince can't protect us. Hearing this, the man couldn't help but shudder and never mentioned the matter again. When Aina left Yutabi, she asked them for 3 horses. Tang Ning could finally free her legs and follow her all the way west. After having the horses, the distance of 100 miles was only more than an hour. The 3 of them rode on the horses and saw a grassland in the distance. Several knights came up to meet Ayana. They looked at Ayana with excitement on their faces. They got off their horses and kept saying something. Aina jumped off the horse, smiled and said a few words to them, then turned her head, looked at Tang Ning, and said, the fourth princess went out to hunt and will be back soon. You guys can come in first. Tang Ning and Lao Zheng entered the pasture. After taking a few steps, a man rushed out from a tent somewhere. Xiaoju looked at him, his eyes moist, and said with a trembling voice, you are finally here. Tang Ning looked at him with a smile on her face and said, thank you for your hard work these days. It's hard work. Xiaoju said with a grievance on his face, you don't know, that barbarian woman feeds me mutton every day and whips me. We'll talk about this later. Tang Ning looked at him and said, General Xiao and Lu Yai have a few words for me to bring to you. Let's go in and talk. Xiao Ju said quickly, let's go, I have a lot to say to you. Inside the camp, Xiao Ju looked at Tang Ning and asked, what message did my father and Yair send me? Tang Ning looked at him and said, they asked me to beat you up hard. The harder the better. After Tang Ning finished speaking, Xiao Ju's screams could be heard inside the tent. This punch was delivered by Mr. Ti Xiao. This kick was requested by Lu Yat. This kick is for myself. In the camp, Xiao Ju screamed in a shrill voice, don't kick your ass, don't kick your ass, don't kick your ass. A quarter of an hour later, Tang Ning walked out of the tent and breathed a long sigh of relief. She felt that the depression in her heart for many days had been swept away, and she felt refreshed from the inside out. Call out. There was a sound of breaking wind in her ears. Tang Ning leaned slightly and reached out to grab a whip shadow coming from the front. With a strong tug, a figure was pulled off the horse by him. He looked at the whip-wielding woman in front of him and said unexpectedly, I haven't seen you for 2 years. I am very good at martial arts. Wang Yanyan tugged hard several times, but still couldn't pull the whip out of Tang Ning's hand. She simply dropped the whip, rushed forward, gritted her teeth and said, you little thief, look at your palm. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fortunate Young Gentleman. Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 700. When Wang Yanyan was whipped, Tang Ning realized that she was different from 2 years ago. The whip she whipped 2 years ago was weak and full of flaws. This was because Gong Sun Ying didn't teach her carefully. The whip just now had a tricky angle. If he hadn't made some progress in the past 2 years, his butt would have blossomed long ago. 2 years ago, he could make her torture her with both hands and feet. 2 years later, she would be on par with him. In a sense, Tang Ning herself had regressed. At this moment, the oncoming palm wind was even more fierce. She was obviously no longer the rookie she was 2 years ago. Tang Ning did not dare to be careless. He held her wrist with his left hand. Wei Nianyan flipped her palm and grabbed his left wrist, and the other he grabbed Tang Ning's right wrist with his hand, leaned forward, bent his knees and pushed forward hard. Tang Ning's expression changed drastically. His hands were captured. If he was hit by her knee, no matter how good Dr. Sun's medicine was, it would not be able to save him. Wei Nianyan took action subconsciously, and then she seemed to realize something, her expression changed slightly, and she withdrew the knee strike again. She let go of Tang Ning and scolded, do it again. Tang Ning was also very angry. They hadn't seen each other for 2 years, and when they first met, she almost got a whip from her, and she almost cut off the Tang family. This also shows from the side that Wei Nianyan has made great progress in the past 2 years, and he is probably no longer her opponent. He looked at Wang Yanyan and said angrily, come again, come again. On the grass, 2 figures moved around, coming and going, punching each other hard, attracting countless people to stop and watch. Who is the Great Khan fighting with? Who is this person? He is as powerful as Khan. Sister Aina, can the Great Khan win? Ayana stood on the sidelines, watching the fight on the grass in front, without speaking. So far, the two have been fighting equally, and in a short period of time, there is no clear winner. Suspicion appeared on her face. The relationship between the princess and the Chengguo official did not seem to be what she thought. She used to think that the two of them. Unable to figure this out, she shook her head and continued reading. Hearing the sound of fighting outside, Xiao Ju limped out of the tent, looked at the 2 fighting men, and said loudly, fight, hit hard, show no mercy. A teenager looked up at him and asked, "Who do you want to win?" Xiaoju waved his hand and said angrily, "Just beat whoever you love." Tang Ning had to admit that Wang Yanyan had made great progress in the past 2 years. In a short period of time, it would be difficult for him to gain the upper hand. If the fight continued, there was even a possibility of losing. Facts have proved that you must not be distracted when fighting. He lost half of his moves when he was distracted. He was hit by Wang Yanyan's palm, and his body became unsteady and fell to the ground. He was about to roll around like a lazy ass and get up. Wei Nianyan had already rushed over. Tang Ning was so anxious that he grabbed both of her wrists. Wei Nianyan clamped her legs tightly around his waist. Both of their bodies were restrained and they rolled several times on the grass. Tang Ning didn't let go, and she didn't let go of her legs either. He couldn't get any benefits from Wei Nianyan today. Tang Ning looked at her and said, "I'm too tired today. If I fight next time, please relax your legs. Let go first. Relax. Let go first." Tang Ning let go of her hand, Wang Yanyan let go of her legs, got up from the ground, patted the grass clippings on her body, looked at the crowd, and said, "Everything you look at, it's all gone, gone." Everyone dispersed in a hurry. Wei Nianyan glanced at Tang Ning, then at a woman with an arched back, and said, "Let them prepare some food to help Aina." Wang Yanyan and Aina went to another camp, and Tang Ning and Xiaoju talked about what happened in Beijing in the past 2 months. What, King Kong became the heir. The imperial court has opened a women's martial arts competition, and Yatter is the #1 in martial arts. Are you here to join forces with the 4 princesses to fight for the throne of Khan? Xiaoju was shocked by one piece of news after another. After about half an hour, someone came over and asked them to eat. Tang Ning looked at Xiaoju who was motionless and asked, "Aren't you going to eat?" Xiaoju waved his hand and said, "Go ahead, I have 2 more buns stuffed with cabbage." Tang Ning was a little surprised. Xiaoju was caught once and even his temperament changed. In the past, he didn't have a big meal with meat and fish. He often went to Tianranja to eat and drink for free. When he arrived at the grassland, he actually liked eating steamed buns, which were also the cheapest cabbage. Filling. The food on the grassland was much better than Tang Ning expected. There were more than a dozen dishes, including meat and vegetables, and the taste was pretty good. It was said that the chef here had learned cooking skills in a large restaurant in Chen country for more than a year. When he came out after eating, Xiaoju leaned at the door of the camp and asked with a smile, "Is the roast leg of lamb delicious?" Tang Ning asked in surprise, "What kind of roasted leg of lamb?" Xiaoju was stunned and asked, "Didn't you eat roast leg of lamb just now?" Tang Ning shook her head, "No." Xiaoju asked suspiciously, "Then what did you eat?" Tang Ning nodded and said, "There are chickens and fish, vegetables and fruits, more than a dozen dishes, but there is no roasted leg of lamb. You have been eating roasted leg of lamb for so long and you are not tired of it yet." Xiaoju looked at him blankly and asked, "Are there chickens, fish, vegetables, and fruits?" Tang Ning patted him on the shoulder and said, "Lu Ya thought you were suffering in the grassland. It seems that your usual food is good. Why are you suffering?" Xiaoju's expression was dull. He looked at Wang Yanyan who came out and said angrily, "Didn't you say you don't have it?" Wang Yanyan looked at him and said, "There are 2 green vegetables left. Do you want some?" Xiaoju was furious and said, "I, Xiaoju, am a man of integrity. Who do you think I am?" Wang Yanyan waved her hand and said, "Then let's go." "Wait a minute." Xiaoju stretched out his hand and said, "My father taught me since I was a child not to waste food." A general of the state of Chen, a young nobleman, actually gave up his dignity for 2 green vegetables. Even Tang Ning felt sorry for him and asked Wang Yanyan to send someone to fry him a plate of cauliflower. Xiaoju took 2 steamed buns and ate them with a stack of stir-fried cauliflower. He ate 1 vegetable and 3 steamed buns. If he was in Beijing, he would not touch a basket of these things that could be bought with a few coins. After finishing a pile of choy sum and swallowing a steamed bun with the juice, he glared at Tang Ning and asked, "It's all your fault. What did you do to her 2 years ago that she treats me like this now?" Tang Ning shook her head and said, "Nothing. He really didn't do anything to Wan Yan Yan. He just burned her clothes, forced Zhao Man's maid to wash her whole body, and spanked her a few times because she didn't obey. That's all. In addition, he also taught her Chinese, made a lot of delicious food for her, and lent her money so that she could buy a lot of beautiful clothes and jewelry. Wan Yan Yan has not paid him back yet. Let's not talk about this anymore." Tang Ning waved her hand and said, "I'll ask her to send someone to take you back to Fengzhou tomorrow. When you get to Fengzhou, Lu Ya will be here soon. Then you will stay in Fengzhou and wait for orders. Don't act rashly without my order." Xiaoju looked at him and asked in surprise, "You won't go back with me?" "You go back first." Tang Ning nodded and said, "I'll stay. I have something important to do." Xiaoju looked at him for a long time and nodded, "Do a good job. Fortunate young gentleman." Author, Rong Xiao Rong. Chapter 701. Tang Ning left his beloved wife and traveled thousands of miles from the capital to this place. Naturally, he wanted to work hard, but before getting down to business, he needed to have a good sleep. These days, they slept in the open air on the grassland. When they went to bed at night, the three of them took turns to keep watch. He never had a good night's sleep. He finally settled down tonight and was ready to sleep until dawn. He waved to Xiaoju and said, "It's nothing. You go back first. I'll take a shower and go to bed." "Do you still want to take a bath?" Xiaoju glanced at him disdainfully and said, "People here have no habit of taking a bath at all. Last time I secretly took a bath in the river. I was so cold. Let me tell you, leaving there is a river 2 miles away from here, go there and wash yourself." As soon as he finished speaking, a grassland woman walked in, looked at Tang Ning, and said in blunt Chinese, "The bath water is ready. I will take you to the place to sleep." Xiaoju looked around and said in surprise, "He doesn't sleep here." Tang Ning took a comfortable bath, changed her clothes, got into the fragrant bed, and quickly fell asleep. Xiaoju returned to his tent, looked at his sheepskin quilt, and thought of Tang Ning having a sweet dream in the silk quilt, and he lost all sleep for a moment. Thinking again that he almost froze to death in the river just to take a bath, but he could lie comfortably in the barrel and take a hot bath, he sighed softly and walked out of the tent. The moonlight was very bright tonight. Xiaoju looked around and saw a figure lying on the ground on the grassy slope not far ahead, looking at the moon. Xiaoju climbed up the grass slope, sat next to her, and said, "I'm leaving tomorrow." Wei Nianyang glanced at him and said, "Didn't you want to leave a long time ago?" Xiaoju looked up at the moon and said, "You saved my life, and we can be considered friends. Before I leave, there is something I want to remind you." Wan Yanyan said, "What are you talking about?" Xiaoju said, "You can't do this." Wan Yanyan frowned and said, "What's wrong?" Xiaoju said meaningfully, "Some people are willing to take advantage of the soft and not the hard. If you take the wrong path, you will only go further and further away. We Han people have an idiom called going in the opposite direction. Have you heard of it?" Wan Yanyan shook her head and said, "No." Xiaoju explained, "There once was a man who wanted to go south, but asked the car to go north. Isn't this stupid?" Wan Yanyan said angrily, "What exactly do you want to say?" Xiaoju shook his sleeves and wanted to leave directly, but thinking of her life-saving grace, he suppressed his dissatisfaction and said, "It means that compared with others, you have already lost at the starting line. You may not be able to catch up even if you catch up, but you still took the wrong path. Do you think you can reach the end?" Wan Yanyan said angrily, "Do you Han people like to talk in such a roundabout way? Xiaozhu looked at her and asked, "Do you know how the pig died?" Wang Yanyan thought for a while and said, "Be killed and eat meat to death." Xiaozhu said, "You are so stupid." Wang Yanyan blinked her eyes and asked, "Then what?" Rotten wood cannot be carved." Xiaozhu glanced at her, got up from the grass, and said, "I don't care, you are so stupid." He walked down the grassy slope, but his steps became slower and slower, and finally he paused, then turned around and walked up again, gritting his teeth and said, "I tell you, my great General Xiao is not a person who does not repay kindness. Even if you are a pig, I can teach you too." He sat down on the grass and asked, "What would you prairie women do if you liked a man?" Wanyanyan glanced at him and said, "Get married." Xiaozhu asked, "What if he doesn't want to get married to you?" "Find him a fight," Wanyanyan said, "knock him down and beat him until he wants to." Xiaozhu was startled when he heard this. After thinking about it, he nodded and said, "This method is right. This is how your third sister became the third sister. Some people just deserve to be beaten. If they don't beat them, they will feel uncomfortable. Only you can do it. Only when he is convinced can you enter his heart. He won't even feel it if you treat him well, treat him with delicious food and drinks, let him take a hot bath, and let him sleep in a comfortable bed. This kind of bitch, we must defeat him." Wanyanyan asked, "What kind of bitch?" Xiaozhu waved his hand and said without explaining, "He is a person who cares about things on a daily basis, but he cares very much about some things. For example, you can call him a coward, but you can't say whether he is tough or not. Stand up." Besides. A quarter of an hour later, Xiaozhu clapped his hands and stood up, saying, "I have nothing more to teach you. Just remember one thing. If you like someone, beat him. The harder you beat him, the better. Wait a moment." As he walked down the grassy slope, Wanyanyan suddenly stopped him. Xiaozhu turned around and asked, "Is there anything else?" "I understand." Wanyanyan stood up, looked at him, and said angrily, "You just called me a pig." She raised her palm. Xiaozhu subconsciously wanted to dodge, but Wanyanyan just waved her hand and said, "Forget it, you are leaving tomorrow, I won't hit you. We prairie people treat our friends who are leaving very well, let them prepare delicious food for you tomorrow." Xiaozhu swallowed and asked, "What's delicious? Are there any vegetables?" Wanyanyan said, "Full sheep feast, including sheep heads, tripe, legs, tails and sheep soup." Vomit. On the grassland late at night, the sound of a man retching could be heard. Tang Ning slept very comfortably. He didn't have to keep watch or guard against wolves. He took a nice hot bath and slept in the quilt that had been dried in the sun. He really slept until noon. Xiaozhu was leaving today. He ate 2 large plates of vegetables as he wished. Before leaving, he looked at Tang Ning and said meaningfully, "Brother, I can only help you here." Tang Ning was surprised and said, "What help?" Xiaozhu left without explaining. His smile before leaving was a little strange. For some reason, Tang Ning always had the urge to pull him down and beat him up when he saw his smile. Of course, he didn't have this opportunity. As soon as Xiaozhu left, Wanyanyan looked at him and asked, "Have you rested? Rest well before fighting." Wanyanyan's progress in the past 2 years is incredible. Tang Ning has been practicing hard day and night, but she has also caught up with him. Judging from her appearance, she should want to get back the shame of the past 2 years. Tang Ning looked at her and said, "First, return the several hundred taels of silver you borrowed from me 2 years ago." Wanyanyan glanced at him and said, "I'll talk to you after you beat me." It's not so easy to beat her now. A princess wants to embezzle a few hundred taels of silver, and she's not afraid of losing her own value. Tang Ning waved her hand and said, "If you don't want to pay it back, forget it. I won't fight you." Wanyanyan pouted and said, "Don't you dare. Tang Ning said indifferently, you said you don't dare, so don't dare. Wan Yanyan said, coward. Tang Ning bowed and said, thank you for the compliment. Wan Yanyan thought for a while and said, I can't get hard. Tang Ning's expression froze, and after a while, he rolled up his sleeves expressionlessly and said, come on, fists and feet have no eyes, life and death are determined by fate, you be careful.